Hey everybody, Justin White here, and you're about to listen to episode 27 of Power Forward. Our guest is Manny Amezcua, President and CEO of Mass Mutual Great Lakes. Manny has a phenomenal story of self-made success, but he gives much of the credit to his family. The son of Mexican immigrants, Manny got his first taste of entrepreneurship at 12 years old. From then to now, Manny strives to add great value to those around him and to attack every day with grit and gratitude. You'll find out Manny's perspective on relationships and leadership, including having a vision, developing a unique brand, and being intentional in your work. Get ready to get inspired with Manny Amezcua right now on Power Forward. The primary purpose of this podcast series is to inform, entertain, and educate. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast series do not constitute legal or other professional advice, opinions, or endorsements of any kind.
This is Power Forward.
All right, welcome back to Power Forward. Justin White with Mateen Cleaves. Mateen, what is good, my man?
Justin, I'm still living a dream, man. Please don't wake me up.
Hey, I would expect nothing less, COVID-19 or not. I know that you're still going to bring that same vibe to the table every single time. And I'm super excited for this episode, Mateen. We have a guy with us who, he is really an everything man. He's a jack of all trades. He is an entrepreneur. He is a philanthropist. He's a public speaker. And he's also an executive in the world of financial planning, wealth management, and insurance. We are pleased to be joined by Manny Amezcua. Manny, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Mateen. Really excited to be with both of you this morning.
You know, we like to motivate people. We like to inspire people. We like to get people going. And in my conversations with you, Manny, you are very much from that same cloth. You are just a positive guy. You are an inspirational force to be reckoned with. So we're really excited to have you on the podcast. And I guess just to start off with, how are you doing right now? That's the first question we always got to ask people in these very different times. So how are you?
I appreciate you asking that. I mean, like everybody else, I think we're learning new things about ourselves every day. My wife, Samantha, and our two children, Ava and Atlas, are absolutely enjoying the unique time we get to invest together, which, truthfully, this is my 19th year in the industry. And, just growing up with a huge vision, really driven and a lot of hustle, you typically look back and say, wow, I wish I would have invested more time together with my family at that age and that age and that age. And so, right now is a really special time. We're receiving it with a ton of gratitude and open-mindedness for the uniqueness of each of us living in this house. And look, it's a time for folks to be gritty. And I've said it 100 times, if not thousands of times. I think grit comes from optimism. And it's optimism that, hey, tough times don't last, tough people do. This too will pass. And in my optimistic mindset, I know that if I just keep my head down and grind right now, things will be a lot better really soon.
Man, and I'm surprised that you answered the question that way. And I'm telling you, that's something about, there's something about certain people. And, we can all say, why did this happen? And how did it happen? And harp on the bad, but it's like, okay, you have time with your family. How do you get better? How do we navigate through this stuff as it's going on? I think that's the mindset that, people should just take on. Quit worrying about how and why it happened, but that mindset, just how do we make it during these crazy times?
Yeah, I mean, and it's Mateen, and it's no surprise you responded that way, right? Look, you and I mean, we grew up at the same time, and so when we look at young guys like, my business partner, Paul Davis, that looks up to you and Matt so much, we grew up at the same time. So I grew up watching you apply that on the court in a huge way. And I've often said people who achieve massive success in sports can achieve massive success in business and even bigger picture in life. And so you're an example of that. And so it's really special to be here with you and Justin right now.
Thank you.
Well, as we record this episode, Manny, we're doing this obviously via Zoom as we all continue to work remotely, and we can see behind you there all the Chicago Bears memorabilia. We know that you are a Chicago native. Yep, you got all that stuff there. It looks great. You're a Chicago native. You moved to the Detroit area a couple of years ago. Tell us a little bit about you and your background, how you got to where you are, and your story.
Well, like many other blue-collar Midwestern kids, my brothers and I were born in Chicago to two immigrants from Mexico. Great parents, perfect parents for us. What I'll tell you is, like any other well-balanced, good values family, our parents taught us about the value and impact that learning people's names, shaking a hand and making eye contact, saying please and thank you, consistently seeking permission to proceed, being thankful for everything, even the little things that we have, and then just working hard. And so I think my story, like many other stories of people who've had a little bit of success in business and life in general, they're grounded in the values and the lessons we were taught as children, sometimes even more so than what we learn through undergrad and or an accelerated MBA program. And it's not to discount those. It's just to say that I think winning is about, dominating is about winning in the little things every day. And I think our story and the trajectory that I've had in our industry over the last 19 years is absolutely a reflection of the things I learned as a young man, as one of three brothers. And then I'd say even more importantly, having this like unflinching level of commitment and support for my spouse. So, to have Samantha by my side for the 19 years I've been in this industry, in a business that's just plagued by rejection. I mean, as our industry, so many similarities in our industries, right? And so to have a supportive spouse that understands, like, look, this requires massive discipline on a daily basis, a ton of mental toughness and commitment to the vision. And again, things we learn as little boys, hopefully you build a family around you that aligns with those values. And I'll tell you what, man, when you marry up and you marry out of your league, you start to tap into levels of success you had no clue you could get to. And so Samantha's a big part of that.
I definitely can relate to you on that. And now let me take you back, because you talked about growing up in Chicago. And me personally, I was very thankful and grateful for my parents and what they instilled in me as a little kid. But me personally, I got to give Detroit bad boys, Detroit Pistons, a little bit of credit for the success that I've had, because I grew up watching Detroit bad boys, Isaiah Thomas and that crew. And they just played hard. They played together. They competed every time they took the floor. Now, you had the 1985 Bears. I'm a big fan of the Bears. I remember the Super Bowl and all the Super Bowl shuffle and all of that stuff. Now, was that something that you kind of benefited from as well, growing up watching the Chicago Bears, the Mike Dickens, the Walter Paytons, and seeing the way they approached and how they dominated? Did that have anything to do with your success?
Absolutely. I think as, when you think back to especially a sort of blue collar upbringing, I just always think about, our childhood. It was like, look, it was help out around this tiny house, go outside and get lost with your friends for 6 to 8 hours while your mom cleans up the things you didn't clean up and makes the meals and gets your clothes ready and stuff like that. And then when you come back, what are some of the things that you really built traditions around? And so growing up in the Chicago area, with all brothers, we had a great tradition of following Chicago sports teams, of playing sports from a very young age. And I think whether you looked at the Bears, you looked at the Bad Boys of Detroit, or you looked at the Bulls team that came right after, or even the White Sox of '05, and then the Cubbies more recently, I think what you just see is it's a society that really says, hey, a part of my DNA in growing up in Chicago or it's around sports. And sports it gives us so many lessons about teamwork, commitment, vision of greatness, and the hard work and mental toughness that it takes. And I think business, again, for us, it's just so similar. And so, if you grew up playing sports, it's kind of like you cheated, like you got a little bit of head start over guys and gals that come into business just from an academic perspective, or at least that's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
Not to mention, Manny, what it's like to compete. I mean, even if you don't play sports growing up, I remember growing up in Boston, another huge sports town, obviously, along with Chicago and Detroit. I was a huge Celtics fan, and every time they played the Lakers, it was like the biggest thing for me. And I remember when I was a little kid, I would cry. I would literally cry if the Lakers beat the Celtics. I remember one game in particular, Mateen, your guy, Magic Johnson, had that skyhook shot like with a second left to win the game, and it devastated me. And I think that sports teaches you not just about what it's like to compete, but also passion. Passion for a team, passion for a cause, passion for something that you truly care about. So it's not surprising to hear, you guys talk about those things translating from the sports world over to the business world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it says, Justin, to your point, I think I've found the most passionate sports teams or business teams I've been a part of. There's a really strong relationship between the teammates. And so I really find that, the most uniquely exciting times where passion was really a strong theme for the success we had, the team was really locked in with each other. There was just an intimacy, an emotional commitment to each other that, look, whether you were in the game or not, you just hustled a little more because of each other. Even more outside of what the reality of the game maybe in that moment was. And so I think relationship and teamwork is just such a special thing that, unfortunately, oftentimes many companies don't catch. They don't catch, the uniqueness of what y'all are doing right now at United. And it's just impressive. And it's kind of cool, me being the little kid, like right on the outside of the fence watching to see what the two of you and Matt are building. And so it's been special.
Oh, definitely. And I'm glad you brought that up because, having success in sports and now working in corporate America, it translates it so evenly translates. I'm telling you, I talk to people all the time. And one thing I love about working at UWF is that family feel, that group of people that's willing to do it together as a family. Nobody is bigger than the team, not even as our CEO. We do it together as a company, as a team. And that's why I've had success in sports, because that was our mentality, quite frankly, being on that national championship team at Michigan State. And even now, it's that same mentality. That's something I talk to leaders about all the time, man, is that, it's about us. It's not me, it's we. And if we do it together, as a team, then we'll have success, no doubt about it.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you catch more breaks, right? It just I don't know what it is about being like unified and aligned, but it just seems like in those random moments, the ball just tips your way more often than not when you're connected as a team and working together.
Well, it certainly seems, Manny, like there are a lot of parallels between the way you approach running your business and the way that we do things at our company, and your entrepreneurial spirit, it really goes back a ways. I know a few minutes ago you touched on your upbringing, growing up in Chicago with your brothers, your parents both being immigrants from Mexico. But you had an experience when you were young. I think it was when you were 12 years old. Your first entrepreneurial opportunity. Tell us that story.
Yeah, so I know, I love talking about that. People always say, they're like, how did you get to where you are? And I'm like, man, there are 10,000 wrong turns, a couple really good ones. But truthfully, if you really think about it, I often will say you win the day in the first hour of the day. And so I think the fact that my first work opportunity, not reporting to my parents, was at such a young age and so entrepreneurial, that paper route in the city of Hammond, Indiana, just reinforced so much that I learned as a little boy. And it just really reinforced my sort of vision for being a successful something in business someday. You know, most people who know me really well, they know, I thought I was going to be Batman, middle linebacker for the Chicago Bears behind Butkus and Iron Mike. You know, Urlacher wasn't playing then, so those are my childhood heroes and Junior Seau. And or I was going to be a successful businessman, and no joke, I would say a successful businessman that runs around in blue suits and white shirts. And so as you've gotten to know me, it's all I wear. So to some degree, that paper route, having been an opportunity where, hey, I had the choice to get up or not. I had the choice to wrap the paper up the right way or not. I had the choice to double bag it when I knew the single bag was less expensive, less time, less effort on my part, but had a likelihood to get wet. Now the customer's not happy. I had a choice to be consistent in when I collected my weekly paper route fee. I had the choice to remember every person's name that I delivered to. And I had the choice to do that for a number of years until I was old enough to become a bagger at the same grocery store my older brother was a bagger at before me. I had all those choices. And I think that paper route really set me up well to understand the power of choice, the power of delivering value, and really just embracing the fact that sales is simply a conversation where we exchange and provide value to someone else. And as I mentioned to you before, like, look, the little bit of success I've had, my parents started it, my brothers continued it, my coaches were a big part of it. But then, Samantha's been working as long as I have, and she's 2 years younger than me. And she's been in client service, working in the restaurant industry. She worked in it for over 10 years before she got into advertising. So I think, we're just set up really well, I think, as a family and a critical mass to continue those things we learned as young people.
Wow, that's impressive, man. But now let me ask you this, because I know, as far as being an entrepreneur, I think self-confidence, man, is very important. Believing in yourself, overcoming adversity, but self-confidence, how much does self-confidence play a role in you having success?
Well, I love that you said that, and I wish I had it right here. The other day, so listen, man, working in a basement office compared to, on the 31st floor of the town center, looking at the entire state of Michigan, it's a different day. So the other day, my wife, I get up and I'm like, man, I'm just like, I just feel like I'm burning it at both ends and it's just nonstop. And clients really need to know that we're here for them right now. You see the market. You see the concerns over mortality. We're an essential business. We're in business. We're open for business more than we've ever been. And shame on us that we weren't open for business this way probably a year ago. This is setting the new norm for us. But in that moment where I started to feel a little emotional, Mateen, Samantha leaves me this note, and it says, remember, you're a leader, you're a champion, you deserve it all. And I'll tell you what, man, I came down here thinking I was still playing Division III college football, thinking I was going to go bench over in the other corner of the basement, even though I haven't benched in 12 years. But I think what my point is, I think self-confidence, it's you have to take some extreme ownership over it, but to some extent, again, relationship, teammates, vision, culture, environment, who we associate with has such a big influence and impact on where we're at mentally with ourselves. And so to me, that's, to get together with you and Justin and to have a business partner like my man, Paul Davis, PD40, it's important. It's important to surround yourself with other people who say, hey, man, you know what? Take this play off. I got you. Or get on my back. I got you. And I think it's important to really align ourselves with companies that have that type of culture. And as steward and team captain of our firm, I take great responsibility for ensuring that I'm not just making myself confident, but I'm feeding that into our people as well.
Good point.
Everyone is going to have moments of self-doubt. Everyone's going to have moments where they need somebody else to give them that pick-me-up. So great job by your wife. That was a really cool story that you told us, and really great to see that she was there for you at a moment when you clearly needed it. So you just touched on the fact that you played sports in college. You went to DePauw University in Indiana, right?
Yes.
So you go to DePauw, and did you have a vision when you were in college for what your post-grad career was going to look like? I mean, I know you kind of had that entrepreneurial spirit already ingrained within you. You probably wanted to go into business, but what were your thoughts as you headed off into the world to start up your career?
Well, there's a really, really unique story that I think makes people our age smile when I tell it, but my last year in college, in undergrad at DePauw. By the way, I want to know two fun facts. I was the most mediocre Division III athlete you ever met. I left a couple times in football and track. I played club rugby, but man, I was just, it was humbling. Fun fact number one. Fun fact number two, your Celtics, Brad Stevens was a year ahead of me and lived across the street from me, and we had a lot of mutual friends. And although I've not stayed in touch with Brad, I just think the world of him and what he's done is just unbelievable.
Very cool.
But anyhow, what I would tell you is my senior year in college, I'm interning at Morgan Stanley Dean Witter in Carmel, Indiana. And they put us in the bullpen. The bullpen was about a dozen cubicles with a phone book, and a client list at each cubicle. And they would bring these interns in. They'd pay us $7 an hour. And they'd say, hey, you need to rattle off 200 dials. And if you book a couple meetings, you might get to sit in on that meeting and actually learn what we actually do at Morgan Stanley Dean Witter. My cubicle neighbor was Tony Mandrich.
No way.
My cubicle neighbor was Tony Mandrich.
A great Spartan.
Dude, right?
A monster of a guy too, right?
The Spartan, the incredible bulk.
Yeah.
You see the E60 now on him. It's just unbelievable. Yes. But you could imagine the Tony Mandrich that was down there with me, back in January of 2000. It was a unique time. So at that time, I was like, oh, man, I'm going to be like Wall Street, Boiler Room, all this nonsense stuff I had in my head because, it's cinema and society has such a huge impact on like what our perspective is on reality and thinking that that's what we want when it's not really what we want. What everyone wants is to have the power of choice. That's what everybody wants. Whether it takes a lot of money or a little money, what we know is that choice in almost every environment takes a little bit of money. And so I quickly learned coming out of college that I wanted to be in the business that helped people create financial success for themselves, their businesses, or on behalf of big companies that they would serve and lead. And so that's why growing up, I think, I grew up with so much faith, so much gratitude for the freedom in this country, so much commitment to family and being little ferocious competitors as kids. What we didn't grow up with a ton of was financial success in resources. And in missing that, I think throughout those many steps in life, from the paper route to bagging groceries, to working construction, to Morgan Stanley Dean Witter, to TV, to my heroes as a child, I realized, man, someday I want to have the power of choice. If I want that, isn't that the American dream? Yeah. The power of choice. So in that, why don't I become of value and service to others in creating that for themselves, their businesses, and these big companies they serve and lead today? And so I think it was the aggregate of the Lego blocks that eventually built the little monument that I look at every day.
I love it, man. I absolutely love it. You get me fired up here, but I love it. Let me ask you this: when did you? And I think sometimes people take self-confidence or you believing in yourself as being cocky. When when did you realize that you were a little different than most people? Like, when did it dawn? And maybe I have something here.
That's a good question. I think for me, the light bulb didn't really turn on until my mid to late 20s.
Okay.
And I think if you went back and you talked to my mentor who brought me into the business, Joe Gergley, who literally, by his belief in me, changed the entire trajectory of not just my life, my family's life, my parents' life, all the organizations that we get to be charitable to in our community. But I think about 3 to 5 years into my relationship with him, I finally could hear everything he was saying. And one of the other things that Joe was absolutely great at was he was absolutely great at saying, I don't know everything. So it's important to surround yourself with winners. It's important to seek out other mentors. And it's important to just take some personal responsibility and do some work in the dark, whether that's at 4 a.m. when Matt and Paul get up, or that's at 10 p.m. when most people are tuning out on Netflix. They say, Earl Nightingale said how long ago, if you invest 1 extra hour a day into something you're really passionate about, after 5 years, you will be in the 1% of subject matter experts in that one area of expertise. So 1 hour a day, 365 days a year, times 5 years. Now, when you do that, you're going to be in the 1%, if not the 1% of 1%. And so I think there's a lot to that. I think you can get a ton of self-confidence from that. And, what does it come down to? What Matt says, outwork everyone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, Manny, I got to ask you this. Well, I want to ask you about the story of meeting your mentor, Joe Gergley, who you just mentioned, because you told me the story before. It's a really great one. But you had a humbling moment or experience when you came out of school because the company that you went to work for went out of business, essentially, right? They went bankrupt, and here you are, fresh out of college. You have all these grand visions of what you're going to become. Like you said, Wall Street guy, tycoon, .com billionaire, and you had to move back in with your parents, right?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, man, that house, 4340 Torrance Avenue in Hammond, Indiana, man, that place has so many memories, so many skeletons in it. Look, when you're 23, and again, at that time, Samantha and I were already dating, and we were getting pretty committed. And then I'm like, I don't have a job. Oh, and by the way, I'm moving into the basement of the house I grew up in, which, mind you, proudly was a cinder block basement. That's it. That's what it was. And I'm moving back in there. And I got to get my head straight on what I'm excited enough to go do that will allow me to provide for us and for the family we'll someday have. And so it was just such an opportune time in my life where I think, Mateen, to your point, my self-confidence could not have been any lower, given just a tiny bit of the wins that I had from my childhood through college and then into the 2 years I spent with Mr. Don Dasky and Big Fat Wow, to then move into that basement. That was tough. That was tough. So, but what, look, I could have just stayed in that basement and not kept knocking on doors, picking up the phone, reaching out to people, telling people, hey, I'm open for business. I'm open for business. Here's the skill sets I have. Here's my resume. Here are my references. Here's what you will get if you take a chance on me. And I think, eventually I shared that enough, as humbly as I needed to, but as confidently as was effective, that Joe hired me. And, and here we are 19 years into this career.
Wow, man. What a story. Because I always, I think about, everybody wants to be a boxer until they get hit in the mouth. It's like, how do you respond to adversity? And I think that says a lot about a person. And most successful people that I've known, pretty much all of them, had to overcome some adversity at some point in their life.
100%. And, we could spend a week with each other, storytelling between me, you, and Justin about how many times we've had to be resilient and bounce back to what we said we would do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you talked about rejection, Manny. I mean, when I worked in the TV business, I can't tell you how many jobs I applied for that I didn't get. I mean, I could literally put them all up on the wall here behind me, all the rejection letters. I'm dating myself because sometimes you'd actually get a letter in the mail. But it teaches you a lot, It teaches you a lot about who you are as a person and resiliency and the ability to bounce back and let things roll off your shoulders and keep pressing forward and kind of, stay true to your mission. So I think it's a great point, but I want to ask you about Joe, your mentor Joe, because the story about when you met him and what that taught you and kind of how that really changed you and impacted the way that you were going to do things moving forward in your career.
Well, I think a couple things from my time with Joe. One, from the very first moment I saw him, he pulled up in a beautiful car. Of course, I get there early, right? I want to be prepared. I want to see who is this mystery man that I'm going to meet for the first time for this interview. And he pulls up in a beautiful car, gets out in a beautiful navy suit, white shirt, gold tie, gold Rolex, just really well manicured of a man. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know how old he was at that time, but he's about 10 years older than me. I just thought before he even said hello and walked into the restaurant, I just thought to myself, I'm like, that's what I thought the last chapter of my life was going to create. And so immediately in that moment, not knowing exactly what he did, I just said, boy, that's what I want to come home and walk into my house, giving Samantha confidence that I can provide, that I can be a good partner in life, that I can really grind and do the work it takes to be successful enough to, again, go back, whether it's a little money or a lot of money, to provide my family and my community and my parents the power of choice through whatever little success I had. And early on in the business, Joe really said, look, I need you to follow the path that we're going to lay out for you. And if you just do what we ask you to do, you'll be wildly successful. The challenge is that at the end of the day, we're all just trying to get the job. We don't really take into consideration what the mentor is telling us it will take to be successful. And so I'm saying, yeah. And then I get into the business and I realize everyone is saying no to me. Nobody wants to buy insurance from a 23-year-old kid. No one is going to give a 23, 24-year-old kid their retirement account. And you know what? They shouldn't. Truth be told, they should look really hard at that person and say, is this the person I want helping me create and lead my plan for financial success for myself, my business, and my family? And so it took a couple of years of hard knocks and kind of fumbling around in the business for me to finally realize, look, there's no way I could possibly know better than Joe. The entire reason he hired me and set the expectations so high and the standards so high was because he too wants me to win. And at that time is when a switch flipped in my head. And this is a switch I share with every new advisor that joins our firm, any established advisor that joins our firm. Look, the only way the firm wins is if you win. The only way I win is if the firm wins. So I can't provide my family the things I want to provide them if I don't run a really great organization that demonstrates that its people and its culture are its greatest asset. And if I don't run that type of organization, that organization will never be of value to you. And if it's not of value to you as the advisor serving the thousands of clients, you're never going to win. Not at the level you could if you were with a better organization. So at that time, I really realized, well, how could Joe possibly want me to do things that are not intended to make me wildly successful? He can't get what he wants if he doesn't mentor, coach, and consult me to success. And I think it took a couple of years, but a couple of years in, I could finally really hear the music he was playing. And, it's been, while not full of only winning, it's been a fun journey since.
Wow. I'm glad you said that. And I think a lot of people need to hear that because we all want to advance. And some people always fix these crazy thoughts in their head that, well, someone's trying to hold me back. You can't do that. Run the play. Just run the play. This guy is setting the play up. A coach called the play. Run the play, and your time will come. Now, it might not happen overnight because that's not realistic,
Right.
But just run the play and trust. And I'm glad that because you listen, man. You listen, and once you start listening, I'm pretty sure your job got easier and easier every day.
Well, and to that point, Mateen, there's times that we've looked at championship teams that stop being championship teams, right? And you can typically, if you get granular enough, whether it's in sports or business, you can typically identify whether it was bad coaching or bad performance on the field.
Yeah.
Right? Bad execution. And so I think that the more aligned we can be as a team between the captain of the team and the teammates of the team, and there could be that level of confidence and trust that if it's XYZ, I'm going to go run XYZ as many times as I'm asked, and that's how we're going to have the greatest chance of being successful. I think that's when teams get special. As you know, right? I mean, I'm not sharing anything you don't know.
No, that's perfect. And sorry, Justin, I had to jump in because I want to share this. I have a 10-year-old son that wants to be successful in basketball, right, guys? And I tell him all the time, I said, if I told you right now you have to walk from Flint, Michigan to Michigan State University, if you had to walk there, no cell phone, no help from nobody else, you have to get there. But they say you can take your dad with you. And I've walked this path a million times in my life. I said, now, would you take me or would you walk by yourself? He said, I will take you. I said, well, listen. I said, that's what I've been trying to get you to understand. You want to be successful in basketball. I've already had success. Listen. And I think that story, man, can translate in business or in life, whatever it is, guys.
Oh, listening is one of the most important skills you can have. Especially when you're dealing with people, right? You're dealing with clients. And Manny, this is something that you're used to. And it actually brings me to my next question for you because you've dropped some of the breadcrumbs, just about the way that you approach dealing with people. But what is your mindset in a business where, you are dealing with, people's lives? You are dealing with, things that are really important in their lives. So how do you approach your business from a people standpoint?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. And look, in our industry, it's not transaction oriented. It really is about a lifelong relationship with an individual or a business around building a really thoughtful, comprehensive, and well architected plan that can create financial success. So I think one, I think it's really important that people that are in our industry, like they want to be in our industry. You have to actually say, man, I really want to be in that business because the business requires a high level of EQ. It requires a high level of relationship building and touch, excessive amounts of communication. And so if someone doesn't really want to be in this business, there's a lot of other great ways for folks to be successful in sales. Mm-hmm. So one, I think the business is so complex that someone has to really want to be in it. Number two, it's really important that they embrace the fact that relationships are typically built off of having a really great process, managing expectations extremely well, honoring your commitments, and providing value. And so we tell our people, like, look, if you don't have a systematic process, a simple, repeatable first meeting process, you got a problem. No process, big problem, right? Because the process is what gives you the opportunity to communicate and inquire and really seek to understand that person and their priorities around life, short and long term. And in understanding, now we've had an opportunity to establish trust, to build prestige for our brand and our teams, and find ways that we can begin to provide some value around that relationship. Ultimately, though, I will tell you, this is a business of high activity. And at the end of the day, if you're talking to 50 families a week and 45 of them say no, you're working with 5 families. Mm-hmm. If you talk to 5 families a week and 4 say no, you're working with 1 family. And so if you have a process, if you're confident about it and you really love the opportunity to build great relationships with people where you understand their priorities and eventually build enough trust that you get permission to provide some value, then it's like he or she who sees the most wins the most. And I've only found 2 ways to drive revenue. And it's we see more people or we sell bigger cases. And so at the end of the day, the math is the math, right?
Yes.
And so we want to be really thoughtful, really high EQ, really high touch on the relationship and providing value. But we also want to be really high octane, grinding to outwork everyone while having a mindset of abundance that says, look, our team can win and so can our competition. The market is so abundant that I don't need to go take something specifically from a competitor to build towards the vision that we have for our organization. And I think that mindset of abundance is really what drives our culture and what makes it special.
Man, I like it. And you said something. I mean, even, okay, you call 50 people. Say you get 5. Well, make those 5 people better. Make those 5 families better. You call 5. You only get 1. Make that 1 person better. And I love what you said now. Because I am so excited, Manny, because I've just got better. I am so much better than I was yesterday by sitting here having a conversation with you. So thank you so much for that. Now, you talk about a lot of things, but something in me says care. This guy cares about people, man. I mean, you can be successful and carry the way you carry yourself and not care about people, man. So talk a little bit about caring about people.
Well, look, I will tell you, and there's videos to prove this on the internet. There was 3 C's that I've been talking about since my late 20s. You know, Justin, you asked, hey, when did it finally really click, right? And an outcome of this business finally clicking for me and the teachings from not just Joe, but so many other mentors in my life, guys like Don Helms. I mean, that's just a beautiful name. Anyway, the 3 C's were, hey, if I really want to aspire to be successful in this business that I think is about servant leadership, whether you're selling direct to the customer or you're attracting people to sell direct to the customer, I think it's servant leadership. And so the 3 C's I would talk about, and it's been over a dozen years, I would say, listen, first, I have to be able to demonstrate and provide people a track record of my unflinching level of commitment, my commitment to their success. So 1 is commitment.
Okay.
But the second C is your C, Mateen, and I always talk about it. Once they see how committed I am, I've got to be able to deliver that in a way that shows that I care about them.
Oh, yeah.
That their vision, actually, the vision for their life and living their life by design actually comes before mine. Because I really can't get the things I want for my life if I don't put their vision and them first. And I think high touch, high communication, vulnerability, our first core value at the firm is transparency, living in transparency at all times, I think allows us to demonstrate we really care about the other person. And the last one, but I won't stay on it long, is competency. I think it's our responsibility to demonstrate that we can be competent at anything and everything that we expect our people to do. So from, earning favorable introductions to professional athletes, business owners, and C-suite executives, which is what my practice with Paul is built around, to phoning them to book a meeting, to running a great meeting, to getting their commitment to work with us. I think it's really critical that we can demonstrate to our people that even at my old age of 42, I'm still competent in the client-facing space, and I'm a decent example of a decent team captain and steward of the firm.
Well, you talked about the core values, and one that you talk about often, Manny, and this is, I guess, kind of your signature is grit and gratitude. And you talked about the situation we're all in now with the pandemic and still having gratitude. Explain to our listeners, for you, grit and gratitude and what that means.
Look, this is the simplest way. I've said it about a dozen times in just the last 30 days. People, this morning, I started my morning very early this morning with a dear friend and client of mine from Chicago. And people will consistently ask me, how are you and Samantha doing in Michigan? They know that when we moved to Michigan in March of 17, and then Samantha and the children followed that summer, they knew that we had moved here to an area of the state that we had never been to. We had no family and no friends. And at that time, that was a scary time for us. It was a scary time because we left so much behind in Chicago, and really where all the love and the care and the compassion was, right, Mateen, to your point, the significance of knowing people care about us. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, in these last 30 days, Samantha and I have sat here and said, I could not be more thankful and more unflinchingly committed to being someone in the Detroit area that gets to be a part of the story that will be written in not just greater Detroit, but the state of Michigan as we come out the other end of this. And that is an authentic, like unflinchingly transparent way of describing the way I feel right now. I feel blessed that I'm here. And although what's going on is a very difficult thing and it's impacting us all very uniquely different, I'm just glad that the optimism, commitment, and grit I have for this area is so high. And I'm so happy that I get to live that out here in the greater Detroit area and with corporate neighbors and social neighbors like yourselves. But we're really thankful. I mean, we're thankful for what we have. We're an essential business. We're thankful to be open for business. We're here for our clients. We're here for people who aren't clients. We're really here just to serve. And that's a big part of our culture.
Yeah, let me ask this too, because, coming from Chicago, which is a tough place, tough-minded people, and, coming into the Detroit area, because it's hard sometimes to get the buy-in, to get the people to buy into what some people call an outsider. Because I've been on one team and had to go to another team and had to get the buy-in. So what was your mindset for, trying to get the buy-in coming from Chicago to Michigan?
Well, look, I think we all aspire to do great things. So first, I lead with so much transparency, authenticity, and optimism that I'm just like, look, if you're miserable, we're probably just not going to get to know each other. I just think energy is so powerful, Mateen, as you know, yes. And Justin, you know that in the business that you're in, that to me, when we came to Michigan, it's like, listen, I'm not going to stop being myself. I'm going to lead with authenticity, optimism, and a real commitment to what I'm going to do now. I think the other part is just consistency. Successful people flee unpredictable environments. We all know that, right? I mean, you knew it playing professional basketball. Justin, you know it in your role on behalf of United, and even more importantly, across all the different people you get to meet and interview and invest time with, that successful people flee unpredictable environments. So many second, third, fourth, and fifth chapters in our lives are because we aspire to be a part of a more consistently, predictably successful environment. And so I think we also, when we came, we just said, like, look, I'm going to be so consistent that it's going to be painful. There was a fire alarm at a conference I went to last year. It was at 3:30 in the morning. I go down to the lobby as a good, guest of the hotel, and I went down in a blue suit and white shirt. I'm consistent.
I love
That's
it.
your brand, man. That's just you. Doesn't matter what time of day it is or night.
I almost wore my Outwork Everyone t-shirt that I made for Matt. When he spent that first one-on-one time with me, I made this t-shirt that says Outwork Everyone. And it's a quote from Manny Amezcua. I almost wore it for this interview, but then I thought, you know what? But they expect me to wear a blue suit and white shirt.
Hey, man, that's like if Batman didn't show up with the suit and the mask on. Come on.
Yeah, that's right.
But no, you brought up a good point, and this is something that you and I talked about pre-COVID-19, and that's things are hard. Nothing's easy, and you really believe that once you accept that, you're going to be so much better off, and once you are able to embrace that, that's when you really start to see a shift. And just thinking about Manny, you saying that before these times that we're all living in, it really resonates because, man, isn't that the truth right now?
It is. And as you know, the world is getting more and more complex every day. Mateen, you mentioned with your 10-year-old son, Justin, you and I talked about your 5 and your 3-year-old. What I think about is how much harder is it going to be for our children? Everything is hard. Anything meaningful that we aspire for in our professional, personal, or financial life, anything meaningful of real substance and significance will take a lot of hard work. Will take a lot of millions and millions and millions of small choices to win, to continue, to persevere, to stay committed. And I'll tell you, I chuckle, and Samantha loved this. Our daughter Ava turned 12 on March 28th. This is what I bought her. Chapter 4, page 49, Choose Success.
Yes.
Everything is hard. Choose success. And that chapter 4, starting at page 49, that was a really great chapter for Ava. And, obviously we do a lot of hand-me-downs, so Atlas will be reading the book next.
and that just for our listeners who didn't see what Manny just held up, that was Matt Ishbia's book, Running the Corporate Offense. So, hey, great minds think alike. And, yeah, passing those lessons on to the next generation, that can't hurt either. But we've talked a lot about your experience in business, working in finance, your approach to people, but you're also a motivational speaker. I mean, you can go to Google and look up this guy, look up Manny Amezcua, and you can see some of the motivational speeches that he's given. Even go to his LinkedIn page. And I remember asking you this when you and I first talked. You weren't born with this skill, with this knack for being able to inspire people, right?
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think we talked about it. I still get nauseous, and I get I can't tell how many times I've wiped my forehead or taken my glasses off, but I become like a furnace in the moments that I speak publicly. And look, a couple things. One is I grew up with brothers that are very intelligent, and in being very intelligent, Mateen, they had a real high level of self-confidence. And in having a high level of self-confidence, they were great athletes. They'd win at Trivia Pursuit. They'd win at Jeopardy. They basically won at everything. So, I don't know if I had insecurities or I was just a little bit more quiet at a younger age. But really in about high school and college, I started realizing, you know what? I think the genius to winning in life is in the simplicity. It's in the stuff we learned from our parents. It's the stuff we learned in Flint, the stuff we learned in Boston, the stuff we learned growing up in Chicago and then Hammond, Indiana. And so I think I really started realizing I think people are overcomplicating 3 things. I think they're overcomplicating what it looks like to be authentic, kind, and nice all the time.
Yes.
I think they're overcomplicating the reason why it's easier to live that way than to live the other way. Mm-hmm. And I think they're overcomplicating the fact that when we help other people win, that thing's going to come around and then we're going to win as well. And so it was in those kind of simple thoughts that I started to find my voice, and I started sharing those authentically and transparently with the people around me. And eventually I realized, you know what? We all wanted to be Batman or some superhero when we were kids. Yeah. You know what? we all wanted to be Iron Mike, or we wanted to be Larry Bird, or Magic Johnson, or Michael Jordan, right? And I say, so I think, and you know what? We all eventually wanted to surround ourselves with successful people like we have today in business and life, in sports. And so I think it's in those things that I realized, you know what? I'm kind of tired. I'm mentally exhausted from all the nonsense that I see out there that I'll tell you, and it goes to the sign Samantha gave me last week. She's been such an inspiration to me. And people always ask, they're like, where do you get it from? I'm like, you know what? I'm typically repeating things my wife has taught me. and how many of us, right, can say, you know, I might be the one with the microphone, but I'm really just executing someone else's vision and someone else's conversation. And that's really been where I think I've drawn a lot of my confidence now, is in the fact that I think people are looking for positivity. I think people are looking for simple ways to be of value to each other and win together. And I also think surrounding myself with people, and again, to Samantha, to people like you, the both of you, to Matt, to my business partner, Paul Davis, to all the great advisors we have at Mass Mutual Great Lakes, it's just been it's been a blessing, and we keep winning.
Hey man,
I'm thankful.
Let me, I love you, but you got to get me a sit down with Samantha, man. What do I have to do to get a sit down with her, man? Because she sounds impressive, man. So you got to do me that favor. Get me a sit down with her. But I do want to hit on something and chime in, like you talked about, simplicity. You know, I meet with new leaders all the time, and they come in with this big, they come in with, a notebook, just ready to take all of these notes. And I'll say, you can put that down. It's not that hard. I'm not going to come in here and write down a lot of stuff. First of all, if you're in a leadership position, it's something about you. And second of all, man, it's not that hard, man. It's simple. You care about people and you like to help people, you'll be a great leader. I can sit up here and act like I'm smarter than what I really am, or go. Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because it's not that hard, man. It's really simple, man. If you genuinely care about people and like to help people, you'll be a great leader.
Well, and to Justin's point, we've talked about this. I'd say the talk that I've given probably almost 100 times now in the last 3 years is called Vision, Hustle, Grit, and Gratitude. And so I think, Mateen, as I attempt to be of value to our organization and our sales team and our advisors, look, man, when I've got a good grip on your vision for your life, and this life you want to live by design, and we've got a good enough relationship that I have permission to be transparent with you when I don't think you're putting in the work, the hustle it takes, and or being resilient in those moments of adversity to demonstrate being gritty, and doing it with a thankful heart and mind. I just think that's the genius in winning at what we do every day, no matter what industry or occupation we're in. And I think that keeps it pretty simple and typically can resonate with folks we work with.
You just made me think of one thing, Manny, and Mateen, you got to hear this, because all the things that Manny's talking about also translate over to the way that you bring people onto your team. And one thing that we really like to ask our guests about is, their hiring approach. What do you look for when you're out there, interviewing potential new team members? Tell our listeners about your process and your approach.
So years ago, from a dear friend of mine, Sam Rodriguez, we would be out, Mateen and Justin, we would be at 10, 12 events a week, grinding in Chicago. We're one of 100,000 blue suits and white shirts that does what we do for a living. And so in that thickness of competition, man, we were just trying to outwork everybody. And so we would run around to these events, and I was plagued with getting stuck because I was just so polite, getting stuck in these 30-minute conversations when I had no exit strategy, and those were a lot of times conversations I should exit from, the graceful exit, because they weren't going to be productive. They weren't going to lead to something else. And there just really wasn't alignment, right? Anyhow, what I realized, my buddy Sam said, listen, man, you got to adopt this acronym FORD. And FORD is FORD, family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. And so what I adopted then, and I've held true to for over 5 years, is my interviews are 15 minutes long. And they're going to go something like this. Hey, it's so great to meet you. I know that you've had a couple really good, thoughtful meetings with so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so. Tell me how that's gone. Then they'll tell me. I'll say, oh, great. Well, since we only have 15 minutes together today because of schedules, tell me a little bit about your family. They'll say something about their family. Tell me a little bit about your current occupation. What do you like most? What do you like least? What's your favorite about your supervisor? What will you miss? Tell me a little bit let's fast forward 6 months from now, we're working together, and I come in, I say, hey, you've done a great job this week. Take the rest of the week off. What's the one thing you're immediately going to go do recreationally, and who will you go do that with? It says a lot about their interests, their hobbies, their passions, and their friends. And then the last one, if you have a great year here with our organization, and we reward you personally, professionally, and financially, what's the one thing that you're going to go out and buy for yourself or someone else? Tell me about your dreams. And so in those 15 minutes, Mateen and Justin, I know if it's a green light or red light. And it's never been a yellow light. I come out of that meeting, I'm the last meeting in the process, and it's either yay or nay, and we move forward. And I'll tell you, in my entire life, no matter how difficult life has been, and I don't know if you all know, my other partner is Desmond Clark, who played for the Chicago Bears, Wake Forest, 10 years with the Bears, from Lakeland, Florida, grew up down there with Ray Lewis. That's a tough environment to play offense in with Big Ray. But, Desmond's got a special story, and everything Desmond says about his family, his upbringing, and choices, good or bad, is said with such optimism, such humility in the lessons that have been learned. And when you meet someone like that can talk about their family, their current occupation, recreations, and the dreams for themselves, their family, and their community, you immediately know who that person is. And I'm in the business of hiring humans. I'm not hiring a LinkedIn profile, an Instagram handle, a resume, or everyone you know. I'm not hiring that. I'm hiring you. You are the greatest asset. And I think Ford does a great job of digging deep in 15 minutes or less. And I think I'm, 95, 98% accurate on the hires. I got a couple mishires, but I think I was off. I must have been wearing like my gray leisure suit. I'm not sure what was going on that day. I own one gray suit. It's my leisure suit.
Now we know. That's also a fun fact. No, it's just great. And I think, that it just kind of goes back to your point about people, and what's really important. And you can just tell so much about who somebody is as a person from some of the questions that you just brought up. And I know, like Mateen, for us in our company, it's all about the kind of person you are. It's what's in your heart. Everything else, we can teach you. So there's just so many similarities, so many parallels here. And that's why it seems like, you're doing so many great things, Manny.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. And look, it's always, although I would have enjoyed this a lot more in person, I would have loved to grab my Starbucks coffee like I do every time. I feel so spoiled when I come over there.
Oh, we miss it too, man.
And look, I'm going to tell you right now, I've said this to Matt and I said this to Laura Lawson. I want to come intern there for 1 week. I'll pay for myself. I'll pay tuition to your favorite charity. I want to be an intern for 1 week, and I want to rotate across 5 departments in those 5 days. And I promise I will stay quiet. I will work hard, and I will definitely wear a blue suit and a white shirt. So let me know when I can get my background, my profile, my resume with both of you as references now into the right hand.
Well, you got me.
Deal.
For sure.
Deal. Manny, this has been great. We wish it was in person too, but nonetheless, it was a great conversation. Best to you and your team at Mass Mutual Great Lakes. Best to you and your family. Stay safe, stay healthy, and hopefully we will see you in person sooner than later. To make sure you never miss an episode of Power Forward, subscribe wherever you find your podcasts and leave us a review. And look for another new episode coming your way 2 weeks from now, featuring more inspirational stories of success. I'm Justin White. We'll see you next time on Power Forward.